Let's see what the wolf and the lamb are up to in this next story in the Aesop's Fables series. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is R.E. On this episode, The Wolf and the Lamb, another story in the Aesop's Fables series. Let's get straight into it. So the story goes like this. A wolf came upon a lamb away from its flock, and it wanted an excuse to take the life of such a helpless animal. The wolf was hungry, it needed dinner, but it didn't want to be immoral, I guess. Well, we'll see. The wolf said, "Last year, sir, you grossly insulted me." The lamb responds, "That's impossible, sir. I wasn't born then." I also just always say this. I love the talking animals. I just think it's so funny. And the wolf said, "Well, you feed in my pastures." To which the lamb responds, "That cannot be, for I have never yet tasted grass." The wolf's got to find another excuse. The wolf says, "You drink from my spring then." The lamb responds, "Indeed, sir, I have never yet drunk anything but my mother's milk." To which the wolf finally says, "Well, anyhow, I'm not going without my dinner." Then the wolf ate the lamb. And the moral of this story that we gain is that any excuse will serve a tyrant. Very interesting story straight off the bat. The wolf and the lamb. Any excuse will serve a tyrant. We see this story playing out through all of history. Tyrants making up these excuses to impose their will. We see this story playing out in many aspects of our society today. We also see this story playing out in many aspects of our own psyches as well. As within, as without, as above, so below. The tyrant is always the ego. The tyrant is always the ego, always trying to impose its will on the world around, making all of these excuses to get its way. The ego will do anything to get its way. It will make whatever excuses, it will try to change the rules and break the rules because the ego is always the tyrant. The tyrant is always the ego. On the other hand, spirit is the real ruler. Yet, it is a humble ruler. Spirit is a humble king or queen ruling over and is not a tyrant. It is not going to coerce you or force you to do anything. The ego is the tyrant. The spirit is the real ruler, the real king. The problem is that the ego thinks that it's in charge, but the spirit is always in charge. But the spirit will never try to basically force its way in charge because it knows that it's in charge. But any excuse will serve a tyrant. It's up to the people, it's up to us to be able to see through these excuses that tyrants will try to use to impose their will in any situation. So maybe we can learn from this to be skeptical, to have an open mind, but to be skeptical and don't fall for these tyrants' tricks. We've seen a lot of these tyrants' tricks before. So who are these wolves? Who are these tyrants in our own society? Who are these tyrants in our own lives, in our modern day society? What about in history? What about within us? Where are these tyrants? And I see this play out, this whole tyrants, any excuse will serve a tyrant in addictions. The addictive part of us is the tyrant, and it will make any excuse to feed its addiction. That's all it wants. All it wants is this addiction to survive. Whether the addiction is food, shopping, clothes, money, drugs, etc., literally any single addiction, any excuse will serve this addictive part of us, which is the tyrant. Any excuse will serve a tyrant.